aren't fans' choice action figures awesome? I mean, it's a way for us to get toy companies to re-release characters that we want or create all new characters or sets, vehicles, castles, Lego sets. I mean, lots and lots of toy companies do fan choice votes. But the thing is, while fan choice votes are cool, they're not exactly democratic and they're not exactly what you think. Now, that's not 100% true. When you have an independent toy company like Beasts of the Mesozoic and they do a fans' choice deco, 100% fans' choice on the up and up, you can trust if it's an independent toy company like Beasts of the Mesozoic, you're actually voting. On the other hand, when you're dealing with a large, publicly owned company like Hasbro, Mattel, Spin Master, etc., fan choice votes aren't exactly on the up and up that we are kind of under the impression they are. Well, not always. I mean, there are absolutely clear winners of fan votes over the years, and toy companies do their best to make all of these contests as honest as possible, and they want to share, either results of the fan vote or at least give the impression that the vote is true, but it's kind of one of those sort of, kind of. Is that what they teach you at that school of yours, as Dante would say? Dante Hicks, not the author of the book about hell. Anyway, the point being is, if they're going to re-release a figure that has already come out, that's pretty easy because there's no tooling involved. All you're doing is asking a toy company to go back into production, turn the machine on with an existing tool that's already been invested in. The other hand, when you're creating a new character that needs new tooling, and it's a fan's choice vote, the companies will work very, very hard to make sure all of the candidates are equal in terms of the amount of tooling, development, cost that it's going to be to make this figure. If one of the figures in a fan's choice vote costs way more or costs way less, it kind of throws off the economics. So the goal is to make every option more or less equal in terms of investment, in terms of deco. And this is important in terms of the P&L and the finances because, again, if you have a figure that winds up costing way more or even way less than the others in the possible assortment, it absolutely can throw off the financials for not just that contest, but for an entire toy line. Everything has to more or less be equal, kind of like, communism. All right, but like communism, fans' choices are something that works more in theory than in reality because there's a lot of factors that come into play that affect who a winner is, and it doesn't always work out for the toy companies, which is why you have to read the really fine print. Usually, when you're voting, there's some kind of form, and most of the time, toy companies, they don't want to go belly up over a bad fan choice vote. So they'll have clauses in the fine print. So why do they need these clauses to override fan votes? Well, sometimes things like this happen. Effet Mon, one of the coolest Star Wars figures ever released, and one of the largest basic Star Wars figures ever released. In fact, it probably is the largest basic Star Wars figure, carded, if you will, that was in an assortment of other basic figures. And while Hasbro, wants to empower fans to be able to choose figures and things like the fan's choice, Effet Mon, because he was so much bigger and really should have been a deluxe figure execution, he won the vote. And, much like those old, British Navy orders, they were, requested and required to make him because they were public about him and there was no clause saying that they could override it. As a result, they lost their shirt. They were very clear about this. In fact, they used that term, that Effet Mon really screwed up their financials for the year. So if you look at modern votes, and here's some examples of ones that I actually worked on as example, the Masters of the Universe Classics line, we had things like letting fans vote for the color of She-Ra's horse or the next figure release. But we made sure in the fine print that Mattel kind of had the last call. If they had to override the fan vote, they could. Not that we did. I mean, Geldor legitimately won. But, and by a lot, in case a character, let's say we suddenly no longer had rights to Geldor, or it was a Filmation figure and suddenly that changed, we no longer had rights to a Filmation character, we needed the kind of escape route, a backdoor way of more or less overriding the fan vote, just in case, for a legal reason, one of the figures turned out that we couldn't do it. Now, luckily, we didn't need to pull that with that contest. Other times, when the winner comes around, there's publicity issues. I was actually, I don't know if I've ever revealed this, but I was told by several people at Mattel the reason Fearless Photog was never made back in the day is they felt that Nathan Bittner and his family weren't quite photo ready or media ready and might not exactly represent Mattel in interviews the best. That's actually why Fearless Photog never got made. Well, at the time, back in the 80s, Mattel didn't have a clause that said they could override the contest. It was more they just kind of declined to make the figure and sort of, blamed it on the toy line Motu going away. A more modern example of this is the Slave Leia, or Hut Slayer Leia, I guess as she's been officially renamed. And this was there was a Black Series contest to do a re-release, and I'm going to call her Slave Leia. I'm sorry, she's always going to be Slave Leia to me. She was released in was it the first wave? Yeah, I think this was the very first wave of Black Series figures, or maybe the second one. It was early, and Slave Leia is a huge part of pop culture, and unfortunately, with Disney acquiring Star Wars and as the new owners, they can do whatever they want with it. They can make movies, they can make TV shows, they could bury it and never make anything. But when they had their recent fan contest for a Black Series re-release, and Hasbro, Slave Leia was listed as one of the options, but I can tell you, I guarantee, even if she won, they would have basically used that clause in the fine print to override the fan vote. Because Disney has told Hasbro, you may not make Slave Leia ever again, because they just don't feel that it's appropriate. And that's fine. They own Star Wars. They can do what they want. And that's why these fan contests have these clauses that kind of let the toy companies in the back door control things. And they have to do this, as I said, for many reasons. For legal reasons, for rights issues. So while, fake contests can be fun and fake things can be fun, obviously we want to live in a world where there's no illusions between toy companies and those of us who buy their product. But you have to remember that toy companies are just like any other major manufacturer of product. They have to have control over their finances, and they can't afford to lose on tooling or a large figure that might win a fan vote or a character that the IP owner doesn't want to get made. So why do they put these figures into the votes? Again, it's just marketing. It's fan communication. But, had Slave Leia, Hut Slayer Leia, whatever she's called, won, I can almost guarantee you Hasbro would have just fixed it on the back end. So I can tell you every contest I've ever worked on has been on the up and up. But I know that these clauses exist because, I've helped make sure they were there just in case you do need to pull it. Well, I hope this video was insightful into how fan contests work and how sometimes, there needs to be a back door for companies to control who the winner is. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please do share it with others. Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. I'll see you guys in the next video.